Good morning. Such a pleasure to be with you again. Such a pleasure to be in the North Carolina spring. Our opening words are taken from a poem by Ada Limon, Instructions on Not Giving Up. More than the fuchsia funnels breaking out of the crabapple tree, more than the neighbor's almost obscene display of cherry limbs shoving their cotton candy-colored blossoms to the slate sky of spring rains, it's the greening of the trees that really gets to me. When all the shock of white and taffy, the world's baubles and trinkets, leave the pavement strewn with the confetti of aftermath, the leaves come. Patient, plodding, a green skin growing over whatever winter did to us. A return to the strange idea of continuous living, despite the mess of us, the hurt, the empty. Fine then, I'll take it, the tree seems to say, a new slick leaf unfurling like a fist into an open palm. I'll take it all. Let us worship together.
flame of fire, spark of the universe that warmed our ancestral hearth, agent of life and death, symbol of truth and freedom. We light this chalice as we strive to better understand ourselves in relation to our earthly home.
Some evenings, after days when the world feels like it has poured out all its despair onto me, when I am awash with burdens that rest atop my body like a burlap of jostling shadows, I find a place to watch the sunset. I dig my feet into a soil that has rebirthed itself 1,000,000 times over. I listen to the sound of leaves as they decide whether or not it is time to descend from their branches. It is hard to describe the comfort one feels in sitting with something you trust will always be there, familiar when all else seems awry. How remarkable it is to know that so many have watched the same sunset before you. How the wind can carry pollen and drop it somewhere it has never been. How the leaves have always become the soil and then become the leaves again. How maybe we are not so different from the leaves. How maybe we are also always being reborn to be something more than we once were. How maybe that's what waking up each morning is, a reminder that we are born of the same atoms as every plant and bird and mountain and ocean around us. In an essay in the journal Orion, Eric Ries writes about camping alone for a week on a remote and wild island near the Canada border up in Maine. In and out of descriptions of that particular beautiful slice of the planet, Ries weaves mournful reflections about how much damage we human beings have done to the earth, especially those of us in the Western industrialized world. Ries writes, "It seems that we have done a very poor job learning the art of being and of allowing others to be, namely the 1.8 million or so other species with whom we share the planet." He goes into some detail on the enormous and entwined problems of overpopulation, overconsumption, pollution, and the destruction of other species' habitat. And he finally concludes, "The root of our most modern sin is that we do not love the world enough." I reread that essay a month or two ago when I realized I would be here with you on Earth Day. It is, of course, not an accident that Earth Day was planted right in the heart of the springtime, in the grace of warmth and the extraordinary flood of color and scent and bird song that pours out around us every spring. Where I live, up in Boston, spring is still just a nice idea. It has been excruciatingly slow this year. So as green things are finally starting to push up from the ground and here and there push out from the limbs of trees, we are really paying attention. Whether they're up north or here where you're much further along in the spring, in that paying attention, surely we are loving the earth. But I wonder, prompted by Ries, whether we love it enough. And I wonder, what might it mean if we could love the world enough? In 1970, when April 22nd was first named as Earth Day, it was, in a sense, the kickoff for what has become the modern environmental movement. It was from that movement that some immense and important changes were made. Some things that have been in place now for so long we can almost take them for granted. The Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the ban on DDT and other chemicals, eventually, in many places, mandatory recycling and much higher standards for emissions. Some incredible things were achieved, and it is important to notice and to honor and to celebrate the difference those things have made, because for one thing, they remind us what we're capable of. There were also important things left out of that movement almost 50 years ago. One of the most critical is that almost no attention was paid to what can only be called environmental racism. One dimension of that is that we human beings are not all equal in the damage that we cause. Pollution caused by the extractive industries in particular, coal and oil and gas and mining of all kinds, has fallen with enormous weight, especially on indigenous communities who have caused almost none of it and have reaped almost none of the benefits. Closer to home, all over our own country, we can see the dimensions of environmental racism in the fact that the most polluting industries, with the least regulation, were lodged in communities of color, where they still, to the large extent, remain. Although these things are spoken of and are named more often today than they were 50 years ago, they are still often ignored in white communities and in the halls of power. It's interesting to wonder what things might be like in the environmental movement today if some of these things had been noted and acted on back then. When Earth Day was first launched, there could have been a great convergence between new care for the earth and new care for the most fragile human communities. Instead, in that space, there was a great silence. At the time of the first Earth Day, there were also very few voices raised, even among the most ardent environmentalists, to sound the alarm about melting ice caps and rising sea levels. We could grasp the dangers of toxic smoke or heavy metals in our water, but the concept of planet-wide climate change was so vast, and the dates threatened were so far in the future, way into the 21st century. And now here we are, way into the 21st century. Each anomalous shift of temperature, each extended drought or 500-year flood, every weird and out-of-season tornado remind us that things are badly out of balance. At least once a week, it seems, there's a news story that tells us the ice is shrinking, the currents are shifting, the temperatures are rising faster than what was predicted only a couple of years ago. It is hard to take in. There is a powerful human tendency to not want to see or know or feel what is painful. We are all together in this. It is part of how we're wired. And so there is anguish in knowing how imperiled are the coral reefs, the honeybees, the polar bears, the bats, even the lovely little peepers, which here and even in New England are one of the first sounds of spring. There is anguish in facing these changes. In his book, The Bridge at the Edge of the World, Gus Speth writes, "It is easy to push the challenges out of one's mind because dwelling on such disturbing material is painful. Indeed, one still hears with regularity that it is a mistake to stress these gloomy and doomy realities if one wants to motivate people. People have told me, for example," he writes, "that Martin Luther King Jr. did not proclaim, 'I have a nightmare.' My reply to them is that he did not need to say it. His people were already living a nightmare. They needed a dream. But we, I fear, are living a dream. We need to be reminded of the nightmare. We will never do the things that are needed unless we know the full extent of our predicament." I agree with Speth on that one. But for me at least, I have found that if I am going to face the nightmare and act on it, act somehow as I can on climate change and climate injustice, then I also need the dream. I also need a vision. The courage and the steadfastness that we need have got to be anchored in the reality of what is, but they are sustained through time, not by fear and certainly not by despair, but by love. Our love of the earth, our love for the human family, despite all the ways we have gone off the rails. One place in which I find that love strengthened is when I listen to the voices of the people who are right out on the front lines of what is happening. People for whom climate change for years now has not been a distant idea, but an extremely present reality. They are the people of the Carteret Islands in the South Pacific, already having to relocate to places far from their ancestral homes because the salt water is sifting into all of the places where they grow their food, rendering the land sterile. They are indigenous communities in Alaska, people who have been ignored and marginalized for many decades, but whose voices are now being raised as they watch their land vanish. They are peasant people in Central America who watch coffee crops decimated by diseases like coffee rust that were once held in check by the cool mountain temperatures. Cool no longer. They are poor communities of color in Houston, Texas, where the toxicity of the water that poured through their homes last fall in the wake of Hurricane Harvey has still not been measured. There are threads that link those disparate communities that are located all around the world. One thread is that the communities are indisputably experiencing right now, today, the consequences of climate change, and are, without exception, populations that have done the least to cause it. Another thread is their determination to have control over the choices that remain to them, the choices they now face, rather than once again have entrenched and often colonial powers choose solutions that do not make sense and in some cases make the problems worse. A third thread that connects all of these communities is that they are actively seeking allies among people of conscience who want to be of use. They are not casting blame. They are reaching out their hands in solidarity. And another thread, one that gives me a thrill of hope, is that the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee is supporting grassroots indigenous organizing in all of the communities that I named. This coming September, as just one example, the people of Shivak, Alaska, will host their counterparts from the other side of the planet, from the South Pacific Carteret Islands. These indigenous communities on opposite sides of the globe will meet together for the first time because of UUSC. And from their gathering, they will then choose and declare the agenda for advocacy and action that they want us as allies to assist with. No matter where we live, there are neighborhoods and communities bearing more than their share of the burden of climate change. One way that we can stay courageous and determined and committed is to find out where they are choosing to push against what's coming and put our shoulders there next to them, following their lead. Hope, at least for me, arises most often when I can put myself to use. And even when the problems are this large, there are places people are calling for us to come and stand and be of use. That is one part, I think, of what it means to love the world enough. But another part is held in what Clint Smith lifted up in our reading this morning. It is to dig our bare feet into the soil and see all of the ways in which the world continues to give birth to itself. To see, in his words, and to remember how the leaves have always become the soil that then becomes the leaves again. How maybe we are not so different from the leaves. How maybe we are also always being reborn to be something more than we once were. And so this week, although the spring is so slow and so cold, I took myself off into the woods that are closest for me, living as I do in Boston. And there, in this large area preserved to the trees and the life there, I walked past trees not yet leafing out, yet the moss beneath them turning an almost impossible shade of green, past the vernal puddles in the middle of the track, full of clear water the color of strong tea, where small, quick salamanders bask in the sun that comes down through the water to touch them, past the tired old leaves that are lying there in the tracks, and where I find the earliest spring butterflies, the size of my thumbnail and the most brilliant color of blue, that I can sometimes coax off of the papery leaves and onto my warm finger for just a split second before they fly off again. Past the little ponds where at least 4 distinct kinds of frog songs come trilling, lilting, chirping, and belching out. Past a misplaced crocus, blooming its brave and cultivated purple way out there in the middle of the woods as though believing itself a wildflower, and past a stunning clump of wild hepatica, cradled in the hollow of an old oak tree, held there like some enormous grizzled old man might cradle a newborn baby. The woods are full of these beautiful, comforting signs of new life. And also there, I passed the matted, pasted fur of a possum winter killed, and found the delicate, pure white bones of a mouse scattered across the moss, and touched a log, a tree fallen so long ago that now this spring, after our long, wet winter, it has finally disintegrated completely, still holding itself in this russet outline against the ground, but truly dissolved now into earth, feeding what once fed its own life. And I stop and lift a handful of it, what was once a flowing trunk raising a whole canopy to the sky, and it crumbles in my hand, undeniably gone back to the earth from which it first rose. How do we love the world enough? We take our own sorrows, our own fears out there into the life of the planet, which is also death, where we see that everything is this way. We rise, we shine, we fall again, and when we do, we are caught and held in the life of this earth, like the shining wildflowers in the hollow of an old oak tree. People have conversion experiences and epiphanies all the time. Can an entire society have a conversion experience? I don't know, but I know what it would look like. It would be a completely different orientation toward what we mean by words like success. Success cannot mean bigger or more or richer. It has to mean less stuff, greater wisdom, finding joy in one another's joy rather than in winning out over each other. The focus on individual wants and preferences has got to yield to a sense of solidarity. And the long habit in the Western world of seeing ourselves as somehow outside of nature in control of it, has got to yield to the truth about our place in things. We don't live on the earth. We are the earth, as every other thing is the earth. Billions of pieces of it, rising and falling and rising again, occasionally rising as we have arisen, with eyes and hands and minds and will and courage, with the capacity to love, maybe even to love enough. William Stafford, in his poem, Starting with Little Things, love the earth like a mole, fur near, near-sighted, hold close the clods, their fine print headlines, pat them with soft hands, like spades, but pink and loving. They break rock, nudge giants aside, affable plow. Fields are to touch. Each day nuzzle your way. Tomorrow, the world. Amen.
Good morning. I'm June Blotnick, and I've been attending this church for over 20 years. I'm the chair of our environmental transformation team. I'm also the director of Clean Air Carolina, a statewide environmental advocacy organization working to improve the quality of the air we all breathe. When I think about my work for cleaner air, I'm not that surprised given where I grew up. Throughout my childhood, the steel mills along the Ohio, the Allegheny, and the Monongahela rivers were pumping plumes of black smoke every day, and stories of the Donora, Pennsylvania tragedy were still recent memory. It was October 27th, 1948, exactly 6 years to the day before I was born, when an air inversion trapped toxic air pollution in the small mill town of Donora. Nearly 70 years ago, a thick fog settled in the town, where people were used to what they called smog season, but this was different. As the days passed, the blanket of toxic smog engulfed the town, but still they held their Halloween parade, and the next day they held their football game where the players couldn't even see the ball. The coach had to scream out, "Pass," so they knew the ball was coming. According to reports, people helped the elderly and women and children get to higher ground in the park at the top of the mountain where the air was clear. But before the rain rinsed the air 4 days later, 20 people had died, 50 people died the month after, and thousands were sickened, and thousands more lives were cut short from living in a chronically polluted town. Many studies have been done over the years about the killer smog in Donora. How did it happen? What were the causes? And why it took days before they shut down the zinc factory. While the studies may not have used the term environmental justice, environmental injustice, environmental racism, the facts were clear. Most of the people who died lived within a half a mile in all directions of the zinc factory. The death rate was higher among non-whites, and there was a relationship between the severity of the illnesses of those affected and the quality of their housing. So here in this story of a 70-year-old environmental disaster near my hometown, a disaster so terrible you would think everyone would be equally impacted, we see evidence of environmental justice. Not much has changed since then, unfortunately. Last year, the NAACP put a report out called Fumes Along the Fence Line. Black people are 75% more likely to live in so-called fence line communities next to industrial facilities. While air generally knows no boundaries, many of us are impacted more significantly than others by air pollution just because of our zip code. As Unitarian Universalists, we believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and we see the world through the lens of equality and compassion. Our faith teaches us that when we do damage to the earth and to all creation, we damage ourselves. On this Earth Day, as I pause to consider this environmental disaster of the past, I'm reminded that there are thousands of invisible threats in our environment today, and commit myself to working with those fence-line communities who are getting hit the hardest. I'm grateful and proud to be a member of this congregation, which is called to engage in the pursuit of environmental transformation. Welcome to today's service. We're honored to have guests with us, and our members would like to meet you and greet you after the service. So if you're visiting today, can you just raise your hand so we can take a look around? Members, please. Okay. We've got a few out there. Please take note of our guests and invite them to join you in Freeman Hall after the service for coffee and conversation. Should it enhance your experience of future services, you can find both a large print order of service and a personal hearing assistance device on the table at the entrance to the sanctuary. If you'd like to learn more about us, please fill out a yellow card and place your completed card in the offering basket when they're passed later in the service. Members with a life event can also do the same on the reverse side of that card. And you can begin passing the clipboards down right now. Some returning visitors may be interested in hearing about how to become a member, and so we'd like you to speak with our membership coordinator, Kelly Green, who's standing in the back of the room. Her contact information is on the back of your order. Again, to each of you, welcome. We now will have a message from our stewardship team.
Happy Earth Day, everyone. I'm Thad Clements. I'm speaking to you on behalf of the Stewardship Committee, and I am here to bring it down a little bit. I'm here to talk about money. Sorry. But you know what? Somebody's got to make the donuts, so let's make some donuts this morning. As you know, about a year ago, the stewardship team, along with administration here, decided to go to a year-round pledging scheme. And instead of the once-a-year pledge drive that we normally have done, what that means to you is that you are assigned a month, and when your month comes around, you consider your pledge for the year and hopefully increase. If you choose to not respond, then your pledge stays the same, unless you change it otherwise. So we're about 2/3 of the way through the year, and as the 2018-2019 budget is being developed and formulated, we're finding ourselves a little short. So this is an appeal, and this is a call to action from a financial standpoint. So if your month has come and gone, and you've elected not to change your pledge month, we ask that you really take a look at things, your personal budget at home, your household budget, and consider an increase. And you can do that. We welcome that anytime. We would never say no to that. That's easy to do. We can do that. You can do that online at the UUCCharlotte.org website. You can talk to any of us on the Stewardship Committee. The staff representatives on that committee are Kelly Green, who everybody knows from the back, and John Herrick. So stop any of us to ask us how that's done. We've had people literally email back to us and say, wow, it's that easy to do, and it really is. If you have given and increased your pledge this year, first of all, thank you. And second of all, maybe do the same. Go back home and really look to see if that number can be increased. We would love for that to happen as well. And if you're a visitor who has been visiting for a while and considering joining the church as a member, this would be an awesome opportunity to support the church, give your commitment financially. So no stewardship message should ever go without a thank you. Thank you for your support. Thank you for all the generosity this congregation provides to do the wonderful program that we can do. You've seen an example of it this morning with a visiting minister, the incredible music that we experience, and we hope to have even more support to continue what we do here. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I'd like to call your attention to the announcements in the back of the order of service. All are invited to a fundraiser brunch in Freeman Hall following this service. This is our fundraiser for the youth's annual trip to Boston. Vegan and vegetarian options are available. If you're a new or prospective member interested in learning more about Unitarian Universalism, this congregation and our membership, you're invited to join us for a Discovering the UUCC next Saturday, April 28th, beginning at 9. Our Board of Trustees will host a question and answer session about the proposed new mission statement between services next Sunday on April 29th. More information is available for these and additional events in our order of service and then also on our website. In a congregation of our size, we have many joys and concerns, and we hold in our hearts and prayers today the family of Debbie and Tommy George as they mourn the death of Debbie's father. We also hold in our hearts Tawana Wilson Allen as she recuperates from surgery. Everyone is invited to light a candle during the offering to mark a celebration, concern, or remembrance.
if not now. Tell me when, if not now. Tell me when. We may never see this moment or place in time again, if not now, if not now. Tell me when. I see sorrow and trouble in this land. I see sorrow and trouble in this land. Although there will be struggle, we'll make the change we can, if not now, if not now. Tell me when. If not now, tell me when. If not now, tell me when. We may never see this moment or place in time again, if not now, if not now, tell me when. I may never see the promised land. I may never see the promised land. And yet we'll make the journey. We'll walk it hand in hand, if not now, if not now, tell me when. If not now, tell me when. If not now, tell me when. We may never see this moment or place in time again, if not now, if not now, tell me when. So we'll work until it's done. Every daughter, every son, every soul that's ever longed for something better, something brighter. It will take a change of heart for this to mend. It will take a change of heart for this to mend. But miracles do happen every shining now and then. If not now, if not now, tell me when. If not now, tell me when. If not now, tell me when. We may never see this moment or place in time again, if not now, if not now, tell me when. But miracles do happen every shining now and then. If not now, If not now, tell me when. If not now, if not now, tell me when. If not now, if not now, please tell me when.
I invite you to take a couple of breaths and feel your body, where it's held in the pew. Feel the air come in and go out. May we know ourselves to be blessed. We are grateful for the miracle of this spring morning, gracing us with its sun, its coolness, its shadow, the clear light of the sky, the glory of the leafing trees and shining flowers. We are grateful for the steady rhythm of our hearts, for the hands and voices we use to touch our world, for the minds that allow us to think beyond ourselves, to reach out our tendrils of compassion, even to those unknown to us. We are grateful for those who are known to us, grateful for the strength we find in those who walk as our companions. May we be guided in the ways of compassion. May we be guided in the paths of peace. Amen.
Unitarian Universalism is a grand vision of a world filled with peace and justice, love and joy. Each one of you, by your commitment of time, energy, and resources, helps make the grand vision real. Individually and together, we are building a world filled with peace and justice, love and joy. We will now collect the offering. please rise in body or spirit and join me for an affirmation of faith?
Prayer of our souls is a petition for persistence, not for the one good deed or single thought, but deed on deed and thought on thought, until the day calling unto day shall make life earthly. May the tide that is entering even now the lip of our understanding carry you out beyond the face of fear. May you kiss the wind, then turn from it, certain that it will love your back. May you open your eyes to water, water waving forever, and may you, in your innocence, sail through this to that. Go in peace, believe in peace, create peace. Amen.